Hello, welcome to The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I'm Jessie Coffield, and if you think you're having a bad Monday, things could be worse. You could be Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, really bad. Lots of DFS and betting analysis coming your way in the next hour. Let's get the party started with the aforementioned football. Popping up on your screens is DK Live's Jeff Ulrich, Julian Edlow, and Ben Zweiman. We're kicking it off with NFL Spin Move, putting a fantasy spin on the biggest stories from week 2. Pretty crazy stuff, guys. Ben Roethlisberger will miss the rest of the season after season-ending elbow surgery. So, Jeff, is there any DFS value in Mason Rudolph?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'm always interested in quarterbacks that are, when their salaries are under $5,000 in DFS. And I mean, Mason Rudolph was drafted for a reason. He profiles really similarly to Ben Roethlisberger. He's a big pocket passing quarterback he's got a pretty live arm. I mean, you saw him last week take over, throw for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's capable. And if you watch preseason this year, you saw a big improvement in Mason Rudolph. I mean, he put up some nice numbers, 65% completion percentage. He was a pretty highly rated pocket passer coming out of college. I mean, this isn't some slub that's necessarily just going to, have trouble just throwing for 200 yards every week. He's definitely capable in the right circumstances. So yes, there's some fantasy value going forward. It doesn't mean he's going to be instant lightning in a bottle, but I don't think this is necessarily death for all of the Steelers skill players.
Jules, Mason Rudolph went in, completed 12 of 19 passes for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, well, for starters, at 4,800 in San Francisco, I think Rudolph makes for great value. We saw, as Jeff said, he is capable, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in that half of football that he saw. So this is a guy that can definitely get you 4-5x value on this week 3 slate. In terms of the long term, we'll see how he develops. This is a guy that was drafted in the 3rd round to be Ben Roethlisberger's replacement down the line, and we're going to get an early look at him to see if he can be just that. I guess, you would downgrade maybe Juju a little bit as like an elite wide receiver 1. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be there just because Roethlisberger has all that experience both with him and in terms of just being a quarterback that can get receivers the ball. So maybe it takes a little bit of time for Rudolph to get on the same page with all of his elite weapons. But yeah, the way that Roethlisberger looked, if we're talking Roethlisberger last year, this is a little bit of a downgrade. But the way Roethlisberger's looked this year playing hurt, Rudolph might be, an upgrade for some of these guys based on how Ben's been playing.
Ben, what do you think? I mean, could Mason Rudolph be an upgrade, actually? Does he have DFS value?
Yeah, I think he can, and he has particular value in GPPs, right? He's a 4,800 quarterback, like Julian mentioned. He actually makes for a couple good stacks this week. The 49ers put up 41 points against the Bengals in week 2. So if that happens again and that offense puts up a lot of points, the Steelers are playing from behind. The game script really favors Rudolph throwing the ball a lot. I think if you look at James Washington, he's 3,500. They have a rapport. They played together at OK State. Vance McDonald caught both of those touchdowns in week 2 when Rudolph came in. So you can look at him at 4,300, I believe. So that's a pretty decent value stack if you're playing that in GPPs. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely values with these guys. Gardner Minshew was a guy we talked about last week coming in for Nick Foles. I think that's sort of a similar situation, but this matchup favors Rudolph a lot better.
Okay, well, with Ben Roethlisberger out, who on the Steelers is hurt most by this news, Julian? And I mean, does anybody benefit here?
Well, like Ben said, Rudolph has experience with James Washington, and I think that is going to definitely help James Washington's status. The guy that is hurt, and it's not only just because of the quarterback change, is Dante Moncrief, because Dante Moncrief has played terribly so far this season, and it's just not that good of a wide receiver. James Washington's a better wide receiver regardless of the quarterback. So we saw Moncrief kind of get demoted in that game against Seattle, and that's something that I would expect to see going forward. Moncrief to be the 3rd or 4th wide receiver on this roster, and Washington to step up to the number 2 wide receiver spot behind Juju and just kind of improve upon where he was earlier this season. I would say maybe Juju is the guy that gets hurt a little bit in the short term just because he maybe can't put up those monster wide receiver 1 numbers that we kind of expected of him, that he did put up last year with Ben. And then we still kind of have to see because we have this running back situation to shake out. It sounds like James Conner's going to be okay, but if he's not, Jalen Samuels is a terrific plug-and-play in the short term at running back, and a guy that I know a lot of us feel at some point, if he gets the opportunity, could even overtake Conner or turn into a 50-50 timeshare or something.
Ben, do you agree with that?
I don't know if I'm crazy about the running back situation. If Connor's okay, sure, maybe he's done it before last season, but you got to think, if Rudolph struggles and he's not getting that offense going in the passing game, defenses are going to have a really easy time game planning to stop James Conner in the run game. But actually, I think the side of the ball that's affected the most is the Steelers' defense, especially in DFS. You're not really looking at them to as a play, maybe a GPP play week to week, but they're usually decent at home. But again, if Rudolph struggles, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the defense, and it's not really going to bode well. So I think the defense is impacted. Vance McDonald's probably the biggest benefactor. I mean, he caught 2 touchdowns before. He's going to be a safety valve if Rudolph struggles. So that's sort of where I'm thinking as far as this situation goes.
Jeff, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ben brings up a good point with the defense. Pittsburgh has played so bad on defense that I actually really think it does boost the fantasy value of Mason Rudolph even more in this situation. I mean, if they're going to get in shootouts every week and teams are going to stack the boxes and try and stop and try and make the Steelers, score with Mason Rudolph, then it's only going to add to Mason Rudolph's fantasy value. That's what you want. You want a quarterback throwing the ball 40 or 50 times, right? So I think it does hurt James Conner the most. James Conner is not an explosive back. He's not someone who's going to be able to run through 12-man boxes every week. He's a 4.65 40 guy. It's just not a good situation for him. He benefited last year with Ben Roethlisberger spreading out the field and teams not being able to stack the box. I think this is a better situation for the Steelers to give Jalen Samuels a shot. We'll see if that happens, but I'm actually not that worried about the Steelers pass game. I'm actually really interested in this plays out. I think Juju might actually benefit in the long run.
In New Orleans, Teddy Bridgewater will see some extended time thanks to a thumb injury for Drew Brees. So will you be rolling out Bridgewater in your DFS lineups, Ben?
I'm iffy on Bridgewater. He didn't look great when he came in for Drew Brees. I was surprised because Sean Payton really didn't do a lot to help him out. I don't know why they didn't get the ball to Alvin Kamara. That really, personally, it didn't really help me too much. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the matchup, he's got to go across the country to Seattle, which is one of the toughest environments in the NFL. It's not an easy matchup. They got the weapons there, and Bridgewater can run a little bit, but I'd like to see him succeed a little bit in the offense before I decide to use him. Maybe I'm looking at that as a GPP. Like, again, it's one of those punt plays in tournaments. If you're really trying to save money at 4,700, Bridgewater's going to start. He's going to get all the offensive snaps, obviously. But yeah, I'd like to see him do it before I proceed.
Jeff, you a little bullish on Bridgewater here?
I'm the opposite of bullish on Teddy Bridgewater. This is a completely different situation. I don't know. Maybe it's just me and my eyes are failing or something. But like from what I've seen from Teddy Bridgewater in the preseason and stuff, he just doesn't quite look like the same guy that he was before that massive leg injury that he occurred. And good for him for coming back. But you could just see the complete downgrade from Drew Brees down to Teddy Bridgewater, in my opinion, at least. I don't, and Ben brings up a good point. I don't know if Sean Payton is going to do enough to help Teddy Bridgewater succeed. They seem to want to just run the exact same offense. I think they'll try and switch to a more run-heavy approach and really try and win these games ugly. And they do have the personnel for that. They have a pretty good O-line. They obviously have the running backs. So I don't think you're going to see high volume from Teddy Bridgewater. I think you're going to see New Orleans try and really squeak out ugly games until Brees gets back. And I really just think that from a fantasy perspective, this is a situation that can be avoided.
I mean, Julian Bridgewater wasn't helped by 5 offensive holding penalties, and he didn't have any, first-team reps in practice. So do you think maybe we got to wait and see with this guy?
So I'm open to waiting a little bit here. I mostly agree with the guys here that Bridgewater is not a fantasy option that I'm looking at, particularly with the price points. He's 4,700 this week, and Mason Rudolph, who we all seem to like more, is 4,800. So everyone's going to go to Rudolph there. I will say maybe in a GPP, if you're a multi-lineup guy, you've got some Rudolph exposure, maybe you make a lineup too and pivot off of him and just go to Teddy Bridgewater, a stack like Bridgewater and Michael Thomas rather than Mason Rudolph and Juju, and see if that works out for you. You'll definitely get much lower ownership on that. And Seattle just gave up that decent looking week to Mason Rudolph. They don't have a great defense, but Seattle's a really tough place to play. And the Saints, they're definitely going to have to change their game plan and use these running backs that they have, particularly Kamara, much more than they did against the Rams in order to succeed here. So it's going to have to be, the only reason I'm willing to wait and see here is this is a talented once first round draft pick. Maybe he can get comfortable with a groove here in the most starts that we've seen him get ever since this injury. So we'll sit back and see if that happens. But yeah, I would much rather have Mason Rudolph on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, he's the highest paid NFL backup, so interesting. All right, who on the Saints is hurt most by this news and who benefits here, Jeff? I mean, to Julian's point, running backs?
I think the running backs and spots are going to be fine just from a pure volume perspective. Like I said, if the Saints switch to just a more run-happy approach, I mean, the carries are still going to be there for Alvin Kamara, and to an extent, Latavius Murray might even boost Murray's value in a little bit, in a small way. But the guy who's going to be hurt has to be Michael Thomas. I mean, they just had such good timing, Michael Thomas and Drew Brees, that when that timing goes off just a second, I mean, it can make all the difference in the world. Michael Thomas is a really good receiver. He's insanely good at getting open. He's not necessarily like a Tyreek Hill or someone like that who's got sub 4.4 speed, though. So you're not going to get necessarily those big plays. He's a guy who relies on timing with Drew Brees, catching volumes of passes. I think if that takes a hit, and it's going to with Teddy Bridgewater, it really hurts his value. So for me, it's Michael Thomas for sure taking the biggest hit here.
Jules, you agree? Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I don't even think you can argue that Michael Thomas takes the biggest fantasy hit here. He's been a wide receiver one locked in with Drew Brees for a few years now, and now he's going to get a downgrade both in terms of the skill set at quarterback and, as Jeff kept touching on, the chemistry. So it just has to hurt Michael Thomas. Is he still going to have a big game here and there? Sure, but he's a guy that we could count on every week to pretty much haul in, 10 of 12 targets and flirt with 100 yards and maybe get you a touchdown, and that's just not going to be the case anymore. In terms of the receivers behind him, they probably all also take little steps back, although Thomas will definitely take the biggest hit. And you would think that they're going to rely on Alvin Kamara here more, but that game against the Rams was pretty discouraging, more so in the fact that they were trailing and Kamara only saw 3 targets in that game. That's something that has to change. Kamara has to see 10 or so targets, I think, moving forward. And then the other thing that Jeff kind of touched on a little bit, Latavius Murray. I think Latavius Murray is actually boosted here because if they're going to grind these ugly games out, he's the running back that they don't want to give that full workload to Kamara. They always had Mark Ingram to kind of rely on, and now Murray might have to take care of a little bit more of that between the tackles running.
Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all this Kamara talk's giving me PTSD a little bit, but I think Jared Cook's a guy you got to look at a little bit. Again, tight end, safety valve, that usually makes sense. Ted Ginn specifically, I think it's the biggest downgrade. Like most of the receivers behind Michael Thomas really don't have much value now, and Teddy Bridgewater isn't a guy that's going to push it down the field, so Ted Ginn really doesn't get a lot of those home run hits. So yeah, I mean, maybe they should get the ball to Kamara more, who knows? But yeah, I think the offense just overall is very lackluster.
All right, good stuff, guys. Taking a look at what's going on in baseball next.
What's happening? I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with the DraftKings Fantasy Flash, not even 24 hours ago, Giants head coach Pat Shurmur said, "I don't think that's a conversation right now." When asked at what point do you think about getting Daniel Jones in, Shurmur's done a complete 180 Monday. He declined to name Eli Manning his starter. Shurmur, we're going to talk about everything moving forward. I think that's fair at this point. To this point, what we've done hasn't been good enough. 0-2, Giants have lost both of their games by at least 2 touchdowns, scoring just 17 against Dallas, 14 against Buffalo. When made aware of his coach's comments, Eli Manning was the least bit surprised. When you draft a guy early and you're not winning games, these questions are going to come up. So I just got to keep working and do whatever my job is. Feels like ownership got in the ear of Shurmur, and if you were him, what the heck would you say? He didn't want to throw Eli under the bus. The Giants receiving core is a mess. Saquon Barkley seems like the only hope of scoring points. Doesn't seem like an ideal spot to just throw Daniel Jones in. But if the Giants don't beat the Bucs next Sunday afternoon with Eli under center, Shurmur may face the reality that conversation has to happen.
Welcome back to The Sweat. We've got DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca joining me right now for MLB Chaser Fade. Agree or disagree with the following statements about tonight's 7-game slate. So there are 3 teams on tonight's slate that are higher than -200 favorites, all home teams. The Twins hosting the White Sox, the D-backs hosting the Marlins, and the A's hosting the Royals. Greg, Chaser Fade that the Twins are in the most danger of being upset tonight.
So I'm going to fade. I don't really think any of these teams are in massive danger of being upset. But if I have to pick one of them, it's probably going to be the Diamondbacks, just because Robbie Ray's starting for them and he's been so high variance this season. For DFS, I think he's a really good play for a strikeout upside. But we've just seen so many times where just inexplicably he goes out, he can't throw strikes. He gives up like 5 runs in 2 innings and gets pulled after throwing like 50 pitches. So just because of his variance, I think the Diamondbacks are the team most likely to be upset.
Matt, what do you think?
I'm actually going to chase this. I think that the White Sox are a little bit sneaky here. They've got Reynaldo Lopez on the mound, who has shown, flashes of brilliance at times since the All-Star break. He pitched a shutout against the Indians 3 starts ago. He's had a K per 9 of at least 10.8 in 3 of his past 4 starts. So when he's good, he can be, a really effective pitcher. He was one of the best prospects in baseball at one point. So it's not weird to me that he's kind of starting to figure things out now for Chicago. I think there's a chance that he shows up and pitches a big game, even against a great offensive team like the Twins. So I will agree that they are probably the most ripe for an upset in my opinion.
Ready for winter, Matt. Okay. Steve Matz and the Mets travel to Coors Field to take on the Rockies. The game total is set at 13.5. So, Matt, chase or fade that the total is way too high for this game?
It's a little chilly today. I figured I'd rock the beanie.
I love
Football
it.
season
I love
is
it.
beanie time,
Yeah.
I think that if anything, this total is too low, and it's already moved up to 14.5 in certain places. If you look at the Mets, they have Steven Matz on the mound. Matz has been awful when on the road this season. He has a 1.94 ERA at home, jumps all the way to over 6 on the road. And then you've got Senzatella for the Rockies, and he can't pitch anyway. So I think that these are 2 offenses that are in a great spot to do some damage tonight. I will take the over here.
Greg, you want to go over?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Matt. And the other thing that I'm going to add to that, just because he pretty much said all the things that I wanted to say, is the Mets lefties make for a really good target tonight. Senzatella has been really bad at home. He's been bad on the road. He's been particularly bad against left-handed hitters. And the Mets have a bunch of lefties in their lineup that are not all that expensive, so they make for a really good stat.
Way too cheap as the leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
What was that?
Brandon Nimmo in particular. He's been batting like 7th in the order for the Mets recently, but they moved him up to the leadoff spot tonight, and he's only 4,400. I think he's basically a must-play.
Okay, the Brewers are minus 157 home favorites against the Padres, but you can get starter Zach Davies at plus 175 to pick up the win for Milwaukee. Greg, chase or fade that Davies is in a good spot to snag that W?
Yeah, so I'm going to chase. I'm a little concerned that he's not going to make it through 5 innings just because we've seen that from him on occasion this year. The other thing also that we have to consider is that pitching for the Padres tonight going against him is Garrett Richards. Now, Richards used to be a really good pitcher for the Angels, but he's been out for the last year because of Tommy John surgery. He also had shoulder surgery in the past. He's had a ton of ailments. He tore his ACL at one point also. So this is a lot of injuries adding up. And if we look at his minor league numbers working his way back, he's been getting destroyed in the minor leagues. He has an ERA, it was like 54, his ERA in AA. He only made 1 appearance. Then he has an ERA over 8 in 2 AAA appearances. So to me, I don't think that he's ready to pitch in the major leagues right now. I wish we had the data to see what his velocity was in those minor league starts, which we don't have, because he's somebody who used to throw really hard, and I kind of suspect that his velocity might be a little bit down now, and that might be the reason he's getting hit so hard. Like, I'm kind of comparing him to what we saw from Tyson Ross, when Tyson Ross used to be a really good pitcher, then came back from a bunch of surgeries, got destroyed in the minor leagues, then came back and was throwing like in the 80s and was just never a really good pitcher again. I think we could see something similar from Richards.
Where do you sit on this one, Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna fade Davies here. I don't think that we'll even see Garrett Richards really that much to factor into the decision tonight. The Padres figure to go to their bullpen pretty early, and their bullpen is basically right in terms of league average. So I think that their bullpen is going to pitch more than Richards. That doesn't concern me. What concerns me is the Brewers lineup without Christian Yelich. I know that they have played well without him recently, but their projected lineup still has some poor numbers over the past 12 months. They have a strikeout rate in particular of 29.2%, just a 3.11 WOBA against right-handers. So I think that this team is due for some regression now that their best player is on the injured list. We haven't really seen it yet. I think that we might start to see it soon. And to make things even more interesting, Action Network has the Padres as one of their best bets of the day as a nice moderate underdog here.
Nats starter Steven Strasburg has the slate's highest strikeout total at 7.5. He's on the road against the Cardinals tonight, and he's had at least 7 Ks in each of his last 4 starts. But chase or fade that he will not hit the over tonight in St. Louis, Matt?
I'm going to chase it. I think this line is really accurately set. We have him with a K prediction of 7.1 right now. Seattle is like just middle of the pack in terms of strikeout rate. They're 16th against right-handers this season. Strasburg not as dominant of a strikeout pitcher as he has been in the past. I think that he should get to, that 7 range, but I think to get to 8, he's going to need to, pitch 7+ innings and have a really good outing. And I'm just not sure that that's a guarantee in this run.
Greg, you want to chase? He's not going to hit the over?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Matt. I think the other thing to consider here also is that the Cardinals' offense has been really, really good in the second half of the season. So it's not to say that Strasburg doesn't have K upside, or if everything goes right, he can't reach the number. It's just that it's a really tough offense, and there's a chance that with him on the road, he doesn't pitch all that deep into the game. If he allows, some walks or some guys get on base, the pitch count gets up a little bit. So if he goes like 6 innings and strikes out 7 guys, like that's a fine outing. It just wouldn't be great for this prop, and I think that's something that we could see as being fairly likely.
Good stuff, guys. We'll bring the football guys back on in just a minute for Overreaction Monday from Week 2's NFL games right after Who'd I Miss On?
Hey, I'm Brendan Glasheen. This is Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan, WeMo as we like to call it, when we recap Adam Levitan's misses from the NFL Sunday main slate. Alvin Kamara managed just 7 fantasy points against the Rams defense. Do you attribute his lack of production mostly to Drew Brees' injury in the first quarter?
Yeah, obviously that played a significant role. Drew Brees is obviously a much better quarterback and more likely to check down, I think, than Teddy Bridgewater effectively to running backs. But that said, any time that we go on the road with the Saints, there's always going to be a lower floor than there is when they're playing the Superdome. That's just the way it's been. That's the way it's always going to be. And we also have a ton of talent on the Rams defense. So I don't think Kamara was a bad play, but he was one of the most owned players on the slate. And you could argue that he was only maybe $500 or $600 underpriced. So maybe in hindsight, that could have been a fade in tournaments.
You missed on Juju Smith-Schuster. He reeled in 5 of his 8 targets for 84 yards, no touchdowns. Vance McDonald was Mason Rudolph's favorite in the red zone. No Big Ben going forward, as well as that second half. You've made us aware of the Rudolph-James Washington connection because they've showered together. What's your feeling now on Juju?
Yeah, Juju play. I was on Juju at all costs in week 2. I thought that he was just set up so well against the Seattle defense, which struggles to contain. I think struggles with a talent perspective in the secondary, specifically at slot corner, and obviously Juju's target share with Antonio Brown gone, I thought would be really high. However, it's turning out to be more of a spread the wealth kind of offense, and Juju is not seeing the 12, 13 targets that I thought he would without Antonio Brown. So I think that's an adjustment forward. You alluded to the connection that Mason Rudolph and James Washington have. That's not great for Juju either, or maybe it could open things up too.
And speaking of players that have been connected to shower tandems, George Kittel was only targeted 3 times in the Niners' blowout win over the Bengals. San Fran just pounded the rock in this game, Levy. 25 throws for Jimmy Garoppolo. The team rushed the ball 42 times. Kittel, not a vocal point here. Is that because of the opponent?
Yeah, I think the game script obviously got away from George Kittle, but I think we need to remember that anytime we're paying up the tight end position, specifically with guys who are really good blockers like George Kittle is, there's going to be a lower floor than maybe we think. And George Kittle broke all kinds of records last year, did a ton of it with Yak. He wasn't really a high volume, like extreme high volume target share kind of tight ends. So yeah, George Kittle, I think maybe an outlier year last year, and we've maybe gone overboard in putting him right next to Travis Kelce in price tag.
That's who Adam Levitan missed on in week 2. You can find his coverage on DK Live, the DK Playbook, on Twitter at Adam Levitan. We'll catch you next Monday to see who Levy missed on in week 3.
As promised, the football panel is back. DK Live's Jeff Ulrich, Julian Edlow, and Ben Zwyman. This, gentleman, is Overreaction Monday. We're talking overreactions from Week 2's NFL games. The Steelers were once plus 180 to win the AFC North, but with the Roethlisberger injury, they are now plus 425, with only the Bengals behind them. Jeff, I know you love the Bengals, but is that an overreaction to the injury, or are the Steelers toast without Big Ben?
No, it's not an overreaction. Look, I don't like to write teams off after 0-2 starts. It seems bad sometimes. It seems just you're just going with the trend. But I feel pretty safe in saying the Steelers are toast. And it's not even necessarily the Ben Roethlisberger injury. It's just look at their division, look at how their defense is played, and look at who they have to go through. I mean, Cleveland, who's probably going to win tonight, are going to be a game behind. Baltimore has started out extremely well. There's just such a big mountain to climb now with basically a rookie QB and banged up, offense. I feel safe in saying this is probably not where you want to go for value. There are some other value plays out there, plus money, that I'd be interested in betting, like the division. I mean, you can go to the NFC West, San Francisco. You could take some other guys in the AFC, but Steelers is not a team I would touch for winning the division right now.
Jules, do you agree the Steelers are looking at next season?
So I'll say this. I think that there's value in this number at plus 425. I think it opened on DK Sportsbook at plus 475. So that means that some money came in on the Steelers to win this division. And when we woke up this morning and knew Ben Roethlisberger was hurt, but not necessarily out for the season, the Steelers were plus 220 to win the division. And all of us think that Mason Rudolph isn't going to be that far of a drop-off from Ben Roethlisberger. So I think that this number at plus 425 has some value. But that said, it's so hard to buy into the Steelers winning the division that this isn't an overreaction. I just think it's a value bet that probably isn't going to wind up hitting. They're 0-2. They're 7-point underdogs on the road in San Francisco next week, meaning there's a pretty good shot that they're going to be 0-3. And an 0-3 team is not going to win this division with a hot start Ravens team out there, a Browns team that we'll see if they turn it around tonight, Monday night against the Jets, and should contend for the division. I would like to be able to do something with this, but I just can't put my faith in the Steelers at this point.
On value, go to the NFC South. Sorry, I forgot to say this, Julian.
Falcons.
The Saints are still favored to win the division.
Exactly, heavy favorites.
Like, seriously, I mean, that's where I would go. So.
Ben, sounds like everyone thinks that the Steelers are toast. Do you agree?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look at what the Ravens have done through 2 games. I really can't see them faltering. Lamar Jackson looks like a stud. The Baltimore defense has been good. They're a great home team, so they already have a 2-game lead on the Steelers. And they have to play the Steelers twice. So even if they split, it's really not boding too well. I guess you could consider that the Steelers do have to play all their division games still, so they could get back into it. And we don't really know about Mason Rudolph too much. So again, like Julian says, there's value there, but it's a long shot. It's a shot in the dark basically. So yeah, I'm not really considering that bet at all.
Lamar Jackson is now plus 1,600 to win the NFL MVP, the 6th best odds in the whole league. Is that an overreaction to Jackson's quick start, or has he shown that he's a contender, Julian?
That is not an overreaction. He looks like the real deal. He's done it against a couple of bad teams, but he's going to play Kansas City this week. So, like, even if you think that Kansas City is going to kind of stop the Ravens here as, I believe, 6.5-point favorites right now, Lamar Jackson's still probably going to have a big game because it's against this Kansas City defense. So, and we just talked about the Steelers, how they're kind of out of it. They're kind of the perennial team that we think is going to be battling for this division. And now none of us think that they're going to be able to do that. So if Baltimore can just win this division and they don't even need a bye, maybe just be firmly in that playoff picture as a division winner, and Lamar Jackson can keep something close to this rolling, he's going to be in the conversation. And all these other guys, Mahomes plus 250, he deserves that number. Brady's obviously going to be up there. Anybody that you can get longer odds at, like plus 1,600, I'm interested in, and the numbers that Jackson's put up are equally as good as anyone's so far, really.
Ben, not an overreaction here?
No, not at all. I honestly think I would consider him the front runner at this point. I think he's a little bit ahead of Mahomes, and this Week 3 matchup will probably decide it, right? If Lamar Jackson goes in,
early.
If Lamar Jackson goes in and beats the Chiefs, I think he'll be the front runner. He's going to put up the stats. We don't really need to worry about the statistics. And the Ravens are in a pretty good position to win the division. So if Lamar Jackson puts up gaudy numbers and they win the division, I mean, the Ravens' next 4 games, Chiefs, Steelers, Bengals, Browns. So they have the 3 division games. They're all pretty soft matchups, so we know the stats are going to be there. And if they head into Seattle week 7? If they head into Seattle week 7, that's right before their bye. If they can maybe go into the bye, I mean, hypothetically 6-1 or 7-0, then yeah, I think Jackson could really run away with it. So I think if you're going to get your bets in on Jackson, I think you got to do it now before he beats the Chiefs.
Jeff, you on the Lamar Jackson train?
Oh, for sure. No, there's I really like this number. I mean, Look, if he does, I don't think he's going to blow away the field, and it's just going to be like, oh, look, we're sitting here week 8, like Lamar Jackson's the consensus MVP, because Patrick Mahomes is still there. I mean, he's going to make this a race, even if he somehow does lose to Lamar Jackson this week. But I really like this price. I mean, you just look at the guys in front of him. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still up there like plus 1,000. I know the Packers are 2-0, but it's not really because Aaron Rodgers is being like crazy superhuman or anything like that. So you got to look at these numbers with a grain of salt. These veteran quarterbacks just get juiced up because everyone just bets them because those are the guys they know. But people like Lamar Jackson. They like the running back turned into a quarterback story. So there's definitely value there. The other name I'd throw out, actually probably in even bigger odds, is Dak Prescott. Played for the Cowboys. Again, you got to think about sentiment. And when you're thinking about MVP candidates, the starting quarterback for the Cowboys finish like first in the NFC, Dak Prescott's going to get a lot of consideration. So Lamar Jackson, Dak, those are two guys I'd look at MVP right now.
The Giants are plus 2,500 to win the NFC East and plus 10,000 to win the Super Bowl, so not exactly contenders. They're refusing to name a starter for Week 3 and have opened the conversation of switching to Daniel Jones at quarterback. Ben, is this an overreaction to a slow start, or should they see what Jones has to offer as soon as possible?
Yeah, I think they have to put Jones in there, and I think at this point they're sort of waiting to see if Sterling Shepard can come back, waiting for Golden Tate to come back off of that suspension, and then maybe give Eli a last shot at showing if he can continue to be the starter. But really at this point the Giants defense is too bad, and the offense being so lackluster has put so much pressure on the defense that's already so bad. And they're already going to be behind in the division because the Cowboys are likely to go up 3-0 after beating the Dolphins this week. They're going to be trailing. I think at this point, Daniel Jones gives them their best shot to sort of get the offense on track and maybe get something going with Saquon Barkley, maybe do a little option there. So yeah, maybe you wait and see what happens with the wide receivers coming back, but I think it's sort of panic mode.
Jeff, what do you think?
Oh, it's an underreaction. I mean, they should just say Daniel Jones is the starter. They shouldn't be thinking about it. They should have said it in preseason. The Giants are going nowhere. We've seen what their defense has to offer, and it's absolutely nothing. This is a team, it doesn't even matter who their starting quarterback is because they're not going to do anything this year. So, yes, they should develop the rookie QB, who, by the way, looked better than most people thought he would in preseason. So it's not even really a case that Eli Manning has been that bad the first 2 weeks. He had a tough matchup against Buffalo last week. He was okay against Dallas, but, I mean, his time is over. This team does not need a veteran quarterback. They should trade him to the Saints or something. But yes, they should definitely be starting Daniel Jones. It's not an overreaction.
Jules.
And the other team you're seeing those Twitter rumors about, Eli to the Steelers. Mm-hmm. Yes, the Giants do not need Eli Manning. You use the number 6 pick on Daniel Jones. Move on, cut bait, let's go. You have Saquon Barkley there, you have Daniel Jones there. Those are your 2 offensive pieces that you're trying to build around. And anybody looking at these Giants' future numbers, I'm sorry, but like, you want to talk value, they're big numbers, oh wow, there's nothing there. Don't even look at them.
Jeff, time to talk about the Jaguars. After their loss yesterday, apparently Jalen Ramsey asked to be traded. Is this an overreaction?
Rough timing on this one. Yeah, I mean, look, I had high hopes for the Jaguars before the season. Obviously, it's not turning out well so far, and it doesn't look like it's going to turn out well. But
Emerson is conveniently golfing today.
It's not just the Nick Foles injury, although that's a big part of it. It's other injuries. Cam Robinson's out. AJ Boy is out a couple weeks. Like, Tug Marone is someone I feel like they probably should have got rid of last year, but they kept him around for one more year. He's probably not going to make it through the season at this point. Jalen Ramsey obviously is like a little bit of the Antonio Brown of the defense. He's got his own agenda, but I don't really think it's necessarily an overreaction to say that the Jags are in some trouble right now and that they're probably not going to be very good for the rest of the year.
Jules, as you mentioned, Emerson out of office for this question. What's your take on this?
Yeah, you can't bet the Jags to win the division. They have Gardner Minshew at quarterback for the foreseeable future. The guys showed some grit against the Texans, but they didn't win that game, basically being held back by the coaching staff. You're not going to win with bad coaching either. Your best player on defense is asking for a trade. It would be nice to get some value here on plus 650, but this division's just so jumbled up. The only 0-2 team, the other 3 teams are 1-1. You got the Texans plus 140. The Colts and who's the other team? Titans plus 240. There's just a little bit more value getting plus odds in any of those other 3 teams that are in it right now than I think Jacksonville, who is going to be in tough spots the rest of the way out. But I will say, we got a 1.5 point spread for Thursday Night Football, Jacksonville hosting Tennessee. So if there's a time for them to kind of push their way back in early, they got to do it now. But yeah, I don't think I would be looking at Jacksonville at this point.
Ben, Jalen Ramsey wants a trade. I mean, where do you sit on this one?
I'm coming in hot. Both of you are wrong. I like these bets. Jalen Ramsey is overrated. If a vote against Gardner Minshew is a vote against America, basically. Did you see the dude? If they gave him the ball on that 2-point conversion, they'd beat the Texans. They're 1-1. We're not even talking about this.
I agree, but you got to factor in the coach. You got to factor in the coach who didn't give him the ball.
Division, though, or teams in that division, Titans, Colts, Texans, all very shaky. Talking about coaching, Bill O'Brien, like Pirate Tom can attest to this. Bill O'Brien is not a very good coach. That's the leader in the division. So yeah, I actually like the Jaguars a little bit. I think this is a decent value bet. They have a defense that can get it going if they get healthy. They have Leonard Fournette at running back. So I think the division isn't very good. If they can get it going, stay afloat, stay a game or two out till they get Nick Foles back. Nick Foles is going to come back. If he's okay, then if they're a couple games out, then sure, they have a shot at this division. The division isn't very good.
Pandering to Emerson Latzia, you hate to see it. Thanks, guys. Back to baseball after this treat from the Pat Mayo Experience.
Talk about that San Francisco situation, though, because I mentioned Coleman's going to miss another 3 to 6 weeks with his high ankle sprain, probably more towards the 6th end. They promote Jeff Wilson from the practice squad. So you're thinking, all right, Matt Breida, going to be the running back 1. He's going to get most of the work, like 60%. We're going to have Raheem Mostert, the mustard man, Dejan himself, and all of a sudden, he's going to play like 30% of the snaps. He'll be used on some passing downs, or we'll see specific situations. Jeff Wilson, they'll mix him in, give him a carry or 2. Nope. Not what happens whatsoever. So here's what we're looking at in the San Francisco backfield from week 2. Mostert actually plays 47% of the snaps. Breida plays 29%. Wilson plays 21%, but here's the catch. Wilson gets all the goal line work, which just really throws a big monkey wrench into this entire situation.
Yeah, that was like so incredibly tilting. Like, at least from like a daily fantasy perspective, I had shares of both Raheem and Breida, but Wilson, man, right off the practice squad and crushing the dreams of everybody. But I mean, to be fair, like they all got a fair share of work here. Like 13 for Raheem, 12 for Breida, 10 for Wilson, even though all the touchdowns. But this is kind of how it's always been with the 49ers, right? Like there's no, even with Coleman in the mix, like we always know it's going to be like this 3-headed monster. It's just Coleman's not in the mix anymore. So on a week-to-week basis, I'd like to see how they use this more, because obviously that game was a blowout against the Bengals, 41-17. The Bengals, no chance in that game. So I'd rather see what they do in a close game and see how they kind of work it out then, because I can't imagine Wilson's going to be constantly in the mix here. At least I don't want to believe that, but 2 touchdowns, I wasn't right on that.
Yeah.
None of us were.
I want to give a special shout out to Dave D in the chat, calling him Colonel Mostert. That's pretty good. I think I might have to roll. That's not Minshew walk, but it's pretty close.
That's pretty awesome. I'm going to steal that. Sorry.
It's funny because the Colonel used to be Emmanuel Sanders because he was Colonel Sanders. Right. And the reason he had when he had so many drops in Pittsburgh is because he was eating all that chicken. He had greasy things, couldn't pull the ball down. That's no longer the case with Emmanuel Sanders, who might be like up into the top 20 as it pertains to receiver this week. Any more running back thoughts from this week? We talked a little bit earlier about Carson. We talked about Josh Jacobs. Was there any other one? Like, are you worried that Cam being terrible actually hurts McCaffrey, or is that like a 1-week blip for him at least?
That feels like a 1-week blip. I mean, we've just seen so many good things from McCaffrey here. And, if Newton's going to be hurting and sucking like he is, like, you just give it to the guy who's going to produce with McCaffrey here. I mean, Cam has no arm strength, it feels like. So if he's going to be doing some quick checkdowns, obviously CMC is the guy to do it to here. So I'm not too worried about it. It was disappointing, but from the grand scheme of things, it was actually a pretty quiet week for running backs, at least compared to week 1. This was more of a receiver week, but I'm not too worried about it. If we get a second week of that, then we got to start to worry here. But I think it's just a blip on the radar. Like, you don't worry about Kamara after his performance last week, right? So I'm in the same boat with CMC.
I worry more about Kamara than I do about McCaffrey with the switch.
I agree with that.
From like, if you're switching from Breed to Teddy Roosevelt, then maybe it's a bit more of a concern. Maybe they lean on him a little bit more, but maybe they also just lean on Latavius Murray too. Like, the Saints still have one of the better offensive lines in the league. You can really pound the ball behind it. They just really weren't in a position to do that against the Rams after they got it seemed like their whole week just went down the tubes as soon as they didn't get the Cam Jordan touchdown, which they should have got, but obviously, It seemed like their momentum just swung and they were dead in the water after that happened.
I mean, if you're a believer in momentum, then that was definitely a killer for them. So I can see that.
More on Cam here in a second. I do want to let everyone know 1 p.m. Eastern time on the DraftKings YouTube channel, the PME and DraftKings Facebook channel, and at the PME on Twitter. You can stream this show live every single Monday. Remember to give the show a thumbs up, and if you leave your DraftKings handle in the comments section and tell me your top 5 power-ranked NFL teams, you will be in a draw for $20 DK dollars, always available on demand after the fact as well. When I talked to Dr. Jesse Moore, who I have on every Friday show about the health of Cam Newton, we both kind of talked about it's not so much the arm strength that I'm worried about with Cam Newton, it's the foot that I'm worried about with Cam Newton, because I think that's leading to a lot of his errant throws, because A, he's not running, which is just should be a huge red flag to begin with, and it doesn't seem like he's able to plant well enough that he's just sailing these balls away. It's not like he's short-arming them. He's just not accurate whatsoever. That looks like old Cam Newton, not the Cam that we've become accustomed to. So I do think that if he can get a little bit healthier, and maybe a foot injury is not something that can, it depends on what the foot injury is, because we haven't really heard about it. If it's just a foot sprain, he should be fine in 2 weeks. And you're going to know the moment when Cam starts running again that he's going to be okay. So if you own Cam on your team, I'm not playing him this week, although the matchup is really good at Arizona. I just don't trust his health situation. But he's not a drop for me. Like, you wouldn't drop Cam Newton yet, would you?
No, I'm definitely not ready to drop Cam.
Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Well, you can't blame this one on the officiating, New Orleans. Multiple reports say Drew Brees has a torn ligament in his throwing thumb and is expected to miss 6 weeks. Yes, it ain't easy being Breezy. The 40-year-old QB jammed the thumb in a collision with Aaron Donald in the first quarter in left Sunday's game against the Rams. This is uncharted territory for Brees. He's only missed 1 game in his career due to injury. That was week 3 of the 2015 season with a shoulder injury. At least it's not season ending this year, and the NFC South tends to be a division that always comes down to the final few weeks, usually very unpredictable. New Orleans made Teddy Bridgewater the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL. Remember, Teddy chose the Saints over the Miami Dolphins. We'll see how he and the head coach, Sean Payton, congrats on the extension, by the way, coach, how they collaborate in Brees' absence. Payton certainly got his work cut out for him. Bridgewater, 4,700 on the Week 3 main slate, facing a formidable Seattle Seahawks defense on the road.
Last time with our baseball panel for the evening, DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca. Guys, let's close it down with MLB Price Check. Got to know which players will be worth their salary on a 7-game slate. Strasburg and Barrios are the top-priced pitchers on the slate, both coming in at over $10K. Then you have 5 pitchers priced between $8K and $10K. You got Ray, Roark, Hamels, Gosman, and Hudson. Greg, are you fading the 2 big guns to go with any of that group?
So I like Robbie Ray tonight, and it's mostly because, one, I think he has a lot of upside just because he's somebody who's high variance. He gets a lot of strikeouts, and he has a really easy matchup against the Marlins. The other thing also is I want to save as much money as possible at pitcher so I could save up for my bats. And I see all three of those guys, Ray, Strasburg, and Barrios, as having similar type upside. So for GPPs, I like what I can get out of Ray and then also be able to pay up for bats like the Mets.
Matt, you go with that strategy. You want to pay up for your bats, save a little on the pitcher?
Yeah, there are definitely nights where it's okay to avoid Coors Field. I just don't think that tonight is one of them. So as much as I think that Strasburg and Barrios are probably the 2 best options on the slate, I don't know if I don't think I'm going to be able to afford them. I get also Greg's point about Robbie Ray. He has big upside. I also like Cole Hamels at 8,700. He's been just night and day pitching at home versus pitching on the road this season. 2.66 ERA at home, 5.40 ERA on the road. So he's pitching at home today. I think that makes him a nice buy candidate against the Reds team that has been known to strike out a bit.
Speaking of Coors Field, the Mets' Jeff Mcneil has 2 total fantasy points in his last 3 games after a monster 44-point effort last Wednesday. He's tied for the second highest salary for a hitter at $5,600 with New York traveling to Coors Field to take on the Rockies. I mean, Matt, is he worth it? You like Coors?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mcneil is worth it. He's not a priority target for me on the Mets today. I think that there are better options. I mean, at the same position, you can get Robinson Cano for $700 cheaper. I think that I prefer him. I already mentioned Brandon Nimmo earlier in the show. I prefer him at $4,400. So I like Mcneil a lot. He's a really good hitter. I think that he's going to have a good game, but I think that given his salary, there are other options that I feel like are better on the Mets.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that Matt said. If I have the salary, I have no issue with paying up for Mcneil at that price. The issue is just that I feel like I want to spend a little bit of money at pitching. Like, I like Cole Hamels, like Matt said. I like Robbie Ray. And there just aren't cheap options I really like. So I don't think I'm going to have the luxury of going all the way up to Mcneil. But with that said, there are just affordable Mets guys who could fit in, like Wilson Ramos, Brandon Nimmo, who we've talked about. So I think those are the Mets guys that I really want to target.
Over at third base, the top 3 salaries are all players involved in the Mets-Rockies affair. The first player on that list to not be playing tonight in Denver is Nats third baseman Anthony Rendon. He is $5,000 tonight. Is he worth that price, Greg?
So kind of. I just don't have any interest in rostering on this particular slate. If I'm spending up for a third baseman, I'm just going to go to Nolan Arenado in a really good matchup against Steven Matz. And then if I want to save a little bit of money, I'm probably going to Matt Chapman of the A's at only $4,300. He's homered in back-to-back games and also has a really plus matchup against Glenn Sparkman. So, I mean, Rendon's okay. I just don't see a reason to roster him for this particular slate.
Matt, is he worth the price?
I do not think so. I'm even a little less optimistic than Greg is. He's got an awful matchup. He's taking on Dakota Hudson, who is the best ground ball pitcher in baseball. That's not the type of guy that you want to target in daily fantasy, because even if he gets hit around, he's for the most part, he's going to keep the ball inside of the ballpark. So I don't see a ton of upside with Rendon. The Nats are only implied for 4.4 runs. I mean, to put that into perspective, the Mets implied team total is like 8.3 right now. So if you're paying up, just take one of the Mets guys. And if you're going down, I agree that Chapman's a nice play. You can also target Louis Arias for Minnesota, who's batting leadoff at just $4K.
How about some value on the slate? Where are you looking to save a little cash, Matt?
Yeah, so I am going with Seth Brown for the Oakland A's. I think that Oakland is the team that you target tonight if you're not targeting Coors Field. So he's batting 6th at just 3,400. The A's are currently implied for 6.2 runs. And Brown has been pretty good against right-handed pitchers over the past 12 months. He's got a 494 WOBA, 275 ISO. Granted, not a huge sample size, but he hits the ball pretty well. And he's got a nice matchup versus Glenn Sparkman, who really struggles to keep the ball in the ballpark. So the A's are the team that I'm looking at from a value perspective on offense. And I think that Brown is one of their best values.
Greg, where are you saving cash tonight?
Yeah, so I think the A's make a lot of sense. If I want to go for a cheaper team that I really like, that I think is going to be really contrarian, it's actually the Royals. So I like Ryan O'Hearn a little bit at 3,700, hitting in the middle of the lineup. So look at Tanner Roark. I just don't buy him as that good of a pitcher. He's been really good against right-handed bats, but against lefties, he's giving up a 386 WOBA. So I think that there's a way to get to him there. There's a bunch of fairly cheap Royals left-handed hitters, and O'Hearn, somebody who's homered a couple times in the last week. He's an upside play who's fairly cheap and won't have any ownership.
Slate approved pick time. Greg, who is your lock on tonight's 7-game MLB slate?
Yeah, we've talked about him so far tonight, and I think it has to be Brandon Nimmo at 4,400. He's definitely the best value on the slate, and we want to be able to roster Coors Field for as cheap as possible. Nimmo leading off for the Mets, prime spot now that he's moved up in the order, was batting 7th, also had a couple games off, which lowered his price a little bit. So to me, he's pretty easily the best value bat.
Matt, slate approved.
Love Brandon Nimmo. Not going to hear any arguments from me there. I'm going with a little bit of a weird pick here. I'm taking Reynaldo Lopez against the Twins. I think that we need upside at pitcher, and we need to get it for cheap. And there's nobody on the slate that I really see providing that. outside of Lopez. There are guys who can potentially go, 5 innings or so, but Lopez is the only one who can give you, 7+ inning, 10+ strikeout type of upside, even in a tough matchup. So I love the idea of getting him at low ownership to pair with Corsi.
Excellent stuff, guys. We got one more block to go on the show, and it's the moment you've been waiting for. Monday Night Football showdown picks are coming your way after we get the Panel B podcast's take on tonight's Browns-Jets contest.
Anyone like the Jets?
Nah.
All in on Lev Bell. Captain spot?
I mean, I feel like you have to, right? Because how many times are you going to get
No, you
fed?
don't. The guy's shoulder, he could take one hit and then be like, I'm done.
Yeah, but that could be, you can say that about anybody. I mean, Donald high-fived Drew Brees, and now he's out for 6 weeks.
That's one way to describe that.
Well, that's pretty much what it was, though. When you watch the replays, it looks like he gives him a high five.
They're just friends.
Besides the torn ligaments in his throwing
right. It was a hard high five. No, I don't mind Bell in a captain's position. I mean, he's probably going to get handed off the ball at least 15 to 20 times, at least, you think. And obviously, he's still involved in the passing game as well. I mean, if he can get through that offensive line to actually get some production, that's another thing. But I don't see why Brown can't be. Because the only thing with the Browns is kind of like with the who was I just thinking of? Oh, the Chiefs. They can just spread it around so much. Like, there's not like a de facto number one. Like, it should be Odell Beckham, but we still haven't seen it yet because we've only seen one game from them so far. So I feel like that's not a team that you can lock down a number one receiver with Baker Mayfield.
I mean, if you want to go off the grid a little bit and play the Lev Bell will tap out card, Ty Montgomery is $1,600.
In the captain spot?
Sorry. No, I'm not going to captain him. I'm not going to captain
Well,
a guy based
about.
on maybe the guy in front of him getting injured.
Well, then you're not trying to win a GPP, son.
True.
No, but if I'm doing that,
whatever.
I'm going the other way. I'm going Elijah McGuire because there's the revenge narrative.
Oh, he just got
signed.
Just got signed this morning.
Did spend the offseason with the Browns as well. But let's back up a little bit before we go with our dart throws. The game script seems to be everyone's starting to lean toward the Browns are going to be pissed off from laying the egg. This is the best opportunity, like best possible matchup here going up against a backup. They're going to come out and show the Browns that we expect. Are we more or less in line with that's going to be the case, Browns winning big?
I'm not sold yet, really.
I don't know if it's going to be a blowout, but I don't see the Jets having enough to scrape this one out. Like, the Browns would have to be more awful in week 2 with an extra day to prepare than they were in week 1.
And I agree with that, but like with the Browns being 265 on the money line, like would you feel great about that? Like, that just seems.
Well, thanks to my parlay, I don't need to feel great about that because I already have them locked in.
But this isn't the All About Julian podcast. This is actually podcast.
I care about my money, Bukes.
It's selfish.
I know. I wouldn't play either team on the money line in this game.
Right.
And I wouldn't play the 6.5 spread.
Right.
To bet. To pick a side on this game, I would see what comes up on the live lines, honestly.
I'm honestly surprised it's as close as it is, because obviously I know Trevor Siemian kind of threw a wrench into all that, but it's like I didn't see enough from the Browns to have them almost, touchdown favored in this spot.
The lame part of Monday is almost over, and the football part is almost beginning. Yes, DK Live's Jeff Ulrich, Julian Edlow, and Ben Zwyman are here to give their picks for tonight's Browns-Jets Monday Night Showdown contest. Jeff, your captain, please.
Jesse, my captain is Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
Look, this is outside of the narrative of like the bounce back spot from the embarrassing week 1. It's the Jets. The Jets have allowed multiple touchdown passes in 11 of the last 14 games. And the guys who didn't throw 2 or more touchdown passes against them, Brock Osweiler and Josh Allen twice. So you kind of get where this is going. I just would be shocked if Baker Mayfield didn't throw for at least 2, possibly 3 or 4, or even 5 passing touchdowns in this spot. The Jets are down C.J. Mosley, Quinn Williams. I mean, this is just a banged-up team, banged up everywhere, and I just can't even imagine how low motivation would be. So you can go with a lot of different Browns skill players. I think there's a million ways the Browns could go about winning this game, but I'm going to go with Baker.
We got Jeff down for 5 touchdowns from Baker. All right, Julian, who's your captain?
Yeah, so I love all these big name plays on the Browns, which is why I'm captaining Jamison Crowder, who I think is the best value. There's really terrible value on the slate, but the best lowest priced value, I guess, is Jamison Crowder. And I'm going to roster him so I can fit some better or captain him rather, so I can roster some better players. This guy got targeted 17 times last week, and I know that was by Sam Darnold. He held on to 14 of those, 99 yards, so just shy of that 100-yard bonus. He also got a rushing attempt. This is a guy the Jets are going to get the ball to. Quincy Enunwa obviously now done for the year. Who knows what Demaryius Thomas will be able to do. Trevor Siemian should be looking down to his slot receiver a lot. That's going to be Jamison Crowder. I think that he's going to see a ton of touches in this game, which makes him a nice captain for me.
Ben, your captain.
Ooh, talking about a lot of touches, let's talk about Nick Chubb. Saves you a little bit of salary off of OBJ and Baker Mayfield. It's a great spot for him. Like Jeff said, C.J. Mosley and Quinnen Williams aren't in there, and C.J. Mosley's one of the Jets' top run stoppers, so I think that's going to be where the Browns look to attack on offense. A stat for you, though. When Mosley went out of the game against the Bills averaged 14.3 yards per carry. That's from Gary and Thorne, one of our writers. His breakdown's up on Playbook. You should go check that out. But yeah, I think Nick Chubb is in a smash spot. He should get around 20, 25 touches. If the game script plays out, I think he could be in store for multiple touchdowns. So yeah, I'm looking at Chubb.
Okay, Jules, well, we know who your captain is, but who would be best to pair with your captain?
Well, apparently Baker Mayfield's going to throw for 5 touchdowns, and Nick Chubb is going to run for 2, according to these other guys. So I should probably play Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield with Jamison Crowder. That's why I'm paying down for him, so I can afford these expensive Browns. So yeah, OBJ, Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, any 2 of the 3, or just fit all 3 of them and then dig down for some real low value. This is why I'm captaining Crowder. I think he's going to get the most touches out of the cheap guys on this slate, and I want exposure to these expensive Browns.
Ben, you're saving on your captain, so who are you pairing him with?
Traditional pairing, running back and defense. So I like the Browns' defense. We've mentioned Trevor Siemian. He hasn't played in an NFL game since 2017. He doesn't have a lot of offensive weapons. I think they'll lean on Le'Veon Bell, but that just makes the Browns' defensive game plan a lot easier. And I think there's going to be a lot of stalled drives. We could see turnovers. A pick 6 wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, I think if you're pairing anyone with the running back, I think the Browns' D is a decent place to start.
Jeff, who are you pairing with Baker Mayfield?
I just don't understand what Julian's thought process is. We got like the realm of sports cars here with the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis on the Browns, and he wants to roster a Ford Fiesta in his captain spot.
Yeah, so that I can get all the good stuff on my roster.
David Njoku versus the Greg Williams defense. Greg Williams does not think the tight ends are allowed to catch the football. It's true. Second most fantasy points per game to the tight end position when he was head coach of the Browns last year. He's terrible at defending. His defenses are terrible at defending against the tight ends. So David Njoku for value with Baker Mayfield.
A Ford Fiesta. Huh. All right, how about a value pick here, Ben?
I like Ryan Griffin on the Jets side. He's extremely cheap. I don't know if I'd captain him because I don't know how much volume he's going to get. But again, Trevor Siemian's in there. If he's looking at anyone, he could look at Griffin. Griffin got 4 targets in place of Chris Herndon, who's suspended in week 1. So I think if you're paying down, he's only 800 in the flex spot. You could get a couple targets. You really don't need him to get too many points to reach value there. And like Julian's been preaching, we want to pay up for a lot of those Browns guys. So if we're trying to fit those guys in, then Griffin's going to get you some salary relief.
Jeff, talk to me about value.
Again, if you're going Jets, go cheap. I'm going Demaryius Thomas, Trevor Siemian, Demaryius Thomas. Play together. Don't pay up for the Jets tonight. Take Ben's advice or my advice. Just pay Julian.
Okay, Julian.
First of all, I'm captaining Jamison Crowder so that I can fit the 3 expensive Browns. It can be done. We're on the same page. The Browns are going to roll here. However, if you want to captain one of those Browns and still fit the rest of them, you can look at Ty Montgomery here, who is under 2K on this slate. And there's a couple of reasons I'm looking for him, Adam. The game log is not impressive. He had 2 touches last week. However, Le'Veon Bell is coming into this game banged up with the shoulder. We had some doubts whether he was going to play or not. It obviously looks like he is, but maybe that means a little bit more work for Montgomery. Maybe it means Bell gets banged up in this game and exits the game, and Montgomery is the clear guy in line to get that work. Or maybe because we love these Browns plays so much, this is just a blowout, and Montgomery winds up taking the second half or fourth quarter anyway. So this is a guy that I think has some upside for the Jets, really cheap in there, and allows you to fit all those top-priced Browns.
Jeff, are you interested in either defense or kickers?
Definitely interested in the Browns defense. I think this is actually a good game to fade the kickers because neither kicker is that good, and also I feel like the Browns are just going to score a ton of touchdowns. So,
Jules, what do you think?
Browns defense for sure, and the Browns kicker, I guess he can interest me in a little bit, but that would be about it.
Well, Ben, we know you like the Browns defense. Right. Any chance you're interested in a kicker?
Yeah, Sam Ficken, the Jets kicker. If the Jets aren't going to be able to move the ball, but Le'Veon Bell gets them in the red zone, we can expect a couple field goals maybe.
Okay, well, gentlemen, that's going to do it. Thank you for your time. That's it for the Sweat. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. for more DFS and betting analysis. Emerson Latzia is going to be very unhappy about all of this Jags talk. Let me tell you, I do not want to see him tomorrow at 6 p.m., but you guys should all be here and download the DK Live app, all right? We'll see you then.